Okay, everybody, we are going to be on page 38 of Diary of Anne Frank today. And when we last left off, we celebrated Mrs. Van Dan's birthday. We also learned about the annex and that it's located in the same building as Anne's father's office. We learned about many of the people that work for Mr. Frank who were involved in helping the Franks and the Van Dans as they are in hiding, and those that bring them food and keep them up to date on what's going on in the world. We learn about the Van Dan's son, Peter, and we also start to find out about how well these two families get along with each other or don't get along with each other. We see many times that they have bickering going on. Miss Van Dan seems pretty superficial, and she seems really concerned about all of the things that she brought into the Franks. She does not feel like she should have to share any of her things, but it's okay for the Franks to share their things. And also, we see that, Miss Van Dan's kind of uppity. She kind of thinks that Anne is not raised right, that she's kind of a brat, basically. And the Franks are left to defend Anne. And we also see the relationship between Anne and her dad, whom she calls Pim, and the relationship between Anne and her mom. And we see that the mom and Margot seem to be a little bit closer. I think one thing, Margot's more mature, and also she's not as outspoken as Anne is. She's a little more quiet. And I think the mom is pretty outspoken, so you can see how two outspoken people like the mom and Anne would butt heads. And where Mr. Frank is more soft-spoken. So anyway, we are going to start on page 38 on Friday, the 9th of October, 1942. Dear Kitty, I've only got dismal and depressing news for you today. Our many Jewish friends are being taken away by the dozen. These people are treated by the Gestapo without a shred of decency, being loaded into cattle trucks and sent to Westerbork, the big Jewish camp in Drenthe. Westerbork sounds terrible. Only one washing cubicle for 100 people and not nearly enough lavatories. There is no separate accommodation. Men, women, and children all sleep together. One hears of frightful immortality because of this, and a lot of the women and even girls who stay there any length of time are expecting babies. It is impossible to escape. Most of the people in the camp are branded as inmates by their shaven heads, and many also by their Jewish appearance. Can you imagine treating anyone like that? Even your worst enemy, I cannot imagine treating as if they're an animal. They probably would treat animals better than they were treating the Jews. Their hatred was like nothing I've ever seen before. It is as bad as this in Holland. Whatever will it be like in the distant and barbarous regions they are sent to? We assume that most of them are murdered. The English radio speaks of their being gassed. Perhaps that is the quickest way to die. I feel terribly upset. I couldn't tear myself away while Miep told these dreadful stories, and she herself was equally wound up for that matter. Just recently, for instance, a poor old crippled Jewess was sitting on her doorstep. She had been told to wait there by the Gestapo, who had gone to fetch a car to take her away. The poor old thing was terrified by the guns that were shooting at English planes overhead and by the glaring beams of the searchlights. But Miep did not dare take her in. No one would undergo such a risk. The Germans strike without the slightest mercy. Ellie, too, is very quiet. Her boyfriend has got to go to Germany. She is afraid that the airmen who fly over our homes will drop their bombs, often weighing 1,000,000 kilos on Dirk's head. Jokes such as he's not likely to get 1,000,000 and it only takes one bomb are rather in bad taste. Dirk is certainly not the only one who has to go. Trainloads of boys leave daily. If they stop at a small station en route, sometimes some of them manage to get out unnoticed and escape. Perhaps a few manage it. This, however, is not the end of my bad news. Have you ever heard of hostages? That's the latest thing in penalties for sabotage. Can you imagine anything so dreadful? So, guys, you would have people, Germans, Jews, Germans who kind of were sneakily supporting the Jews, Dutch, Jewish, other people that were working together to sabotage the plans of what was going on with Hitler. They would do things such as, how the trains would load them in cattle cars to take them to these camps. the people who were trying to help the Jews would kind of sabotage things, either have accidents to where the trains couldn't get down the tracks or different things. Well, if they were caught for sabotage, they would, well, it tells you right here on 39, prominent citizens, innocent people, are thrown into prison to await their fate. If the saboteur, the one who sabotages, can't be traced, the Gestapo simply put about 5 hostages against the wall. Announcements of their deaths appear in the papers frequently. These outrages are described as fatal accidents. Nice people, the Germans. So basically, if they couldn't find out who was doing it, it's kind of like they would be saying, either you tell us who did it, or 5 people are going to die. That's basically what happened. And they would make a spectacle of them, because if other people saw this happening, it would make them afraid to take part in any type of sabotage. So, but then they didn't want it to appear in the papers as if they were doing all this, because some Germans who didn't really realize how bad Hitler and these other people were, if too many people got aware of the fact of how evil everything was, you might start having people fight back, and they don't want an uprising. So they kind of have to be careful until they get control. So anyway, to think that I was one of them too. No, Hitler took away our nationality long ago. In fact, Germans and Jews are the greatest enemies in the world. Friday, 16th of October, 1942. Dear Kitty, I'm terribly busy. I've just translated a chapter out of La Belle Nivernaise and made notes of new words. Then a perfectly foul math problem and 3 pages of French grammar. I flatly refuse to do these math problems every day. Daddy agrees that they're vile. I'm almost better at them than he is, though neither of us are much good, and we often have to fetch Margot. I'm the furthest on the 3 of us in shorthand. Yesterday I finished The Assault. It's quite amusing, but doesn't touch Jules Deher. As a matter of fact, I think Sissy van Marksveld is a first-rate writer. I shall definitely let my children read her books. Mommy Margot and I are as thick as thieves again. It's really much better. Margot and I got in the same bed together last evening. It was a frightful squash, but that was just the fun of it. She asked if she could read my diary. I said yes, at least bits of it, and then I asked if I could read hers, and she said yes. Then we got on to the subject of the future. I asked her what she wanted to be, but she wouldn't say, and made a great secret of it. I gathered something about teaching. I'm not sure if I'm right, but I think so. Really, I shouldn't be so curious. This morning I was lying on Peter's bed, having chased him off at first. He was furious with me. Not that I cared very much. He might be a bit more friendly with me for once. After all, I did give him an apple yesterday. I asked Margot if she thought I was very ugly. She said that I was quite attractive and that I had nice eyes. Rather vague, don't you think? Till next time. In other words, she said Margot kind of almost didn't answer her direct question, you know. So, but do make notes of the things that I said earlier. I should have stopped to remind you about the Jews being taken away by the dozens, and also to mention that about the sabotage acts that are going on, and that the Gestapo will shoot people who were involved with sabotage. So you do need to make notes of that. Okay, so we are on page 41, Tuesday, the 20th of October, 1942. Dear Kitty, my hand still shakes, although it's 2 hours since we had the shock. I should explain that there are 5 fire extinguishers in the house. We knew that someone was coming to fill them, but no one had warned us when the carpenter, or whatever you call him, was coming. The result was that we weren't making any attempt to keep quiet until I heard hammering outside on the landing opposite our cupboard door. I thought of the carpenter at once and warned Ellie, who was having a meal with us, that she shouldn't go downstairs. Daddy and I posted ourselves at the door so as to hear when the man left. After he'd been working for a quarter of an hour, he laid his hammer and tools down on top of our cupboard, as we thought, and knocked at our door. We turned absolutely white. Perhaps he had heard something after all and wanted to investigate our secret den. It seemed like it. The knocking, pulling, pushing, and wrenching went on. I nearly fainted at the thought that this utter stranger might discover our beautiful secret hiding place. And just as I thought my last hour was at hand, I heard Mr. Kufas say, "Open the door, it's only me." We opened it immediately. The hook that holds the cupboard, which can be undone by people who know the secret, had gotten jammed. That was why no one had been able to warn us about the carpenter. So the man had now gone downstairs, and Kufus wanted to fetch Ellie, but couldn't open the cupboard again. So just make a note that the carpenter had come, and they didn't expect it. So that kind of scared them because they wondered if someone would find their secret hiding place. Okay, at the bottom of 41, we're moving to 42. It was a great relief to me, I can tell you. In my imagination, the man who I thought was trying to get in had been growing and growing in size until in the end he appeared to be a giant and the greatest fascist that ever walked the earth. So in other words, she was fearing the worst. So you know how when you get more scared and more scared, things just seem to be bigger and bigger because you're so terrified? Well, luckily everything was okay this time. Meanwhile, we had great fun on Monday. Meep and Hank, that's her husband, spent the night here. Margot and I went in Mommy and Daddy's room for the night so that the Van Santons could have our room. The meal tasted divine. There was one small interruption. Daddy's lamp blew a fuse, and all of a sudden we were sitting in darkness. What was to be done? There was some fuse wire in the house, but the fuse box is right at the very back of the dark storeroom. Not such a nice job after dark. Still, the men ventured forth, and after 10 minutes were able to put the candles away again. I got up early this morning. He had to leave at 8:30. After a cozy breakfast, Meep went downstairs. It was pouring, and she was glad not to have to cycle to the office. Next week, Ellie is coming to stay for a night. Thursday, the 29th of October, 1942. Dear Kitty, I'm awfully worried. Daddy's ill. He has a high temperature and a red rash. It looks like measles. Think of it. We can't even call a doctor. Mummy is letting him have a good sweat. Perhaps that will send his temperature down. So I might just make a note there that Ann's daddy is ill and they think it might be measles. This morning, Meep told us that all the furniture has been removed from the Van Dan's house. We haven't told Mrs. Van Dan yet. She's such a bundle of nerves already, and we don't feel like listening to another moan over all the lovely china and beautiful chairs that she left at home. We had to leave almost all our nice things behind, so what's the good of grumbling about it now? As we say, once again, Mrs. Van Dan is pretty superficial. You can tell she is just kind of high class and used to having everything her way. I'm allowed to read more grown-up books lately. I'm now reading Eva's Youth by Nico van Zuchtelen. I can't see very much difference between this and the schoolgirl love stories. It is true there are bits about women selling themselves to unknown men in back streets. They ask a packet of money for it. I'd die of shame if anything like that happened to me. Daddy has brought the plays of Goethe and Schiller from the big cupboard. He is going to read to me every evening. We've started with Don Carlos. Following Daddy's good example, Mummy has pressed her prayer book into my hand. For decency's sake, I read some of the prayers in German. They are certainly beautiful, but they don't convey much to me. Why does she force me to be pious? Just to oblige her. So being pious is kind of like being good and sticking to what's right. And so she's allowed to read more books that are more mature, but yet her mom is still wanting to say, here, you still need to be pious. Read these prayer books. Tomorrow we are going to light the fire for the first time. I expect we shall be suffocated with smoke. The chimney hasn't been swept for ages. Let's hope the thing draws. And it means like draws the smoke out of the house. Saturday the 7th of November, 1942. We're at the bottom of 43. Dear Kitty, Mummy is frightfully irritable, and that always seems to herald unpleasantness for me. It is just chance that Daddy and Mommy... Is it just chance that Daddy and Mommy never rebuke Margot and that they always drop on me for everything? Yesterday evening, for instance, Margot was reading a book with lovely drawings in it. She got up and went upstairs, put the book down, ready to go on with it later. I wasn't doing anything, so picked up the book and started looking at the pictures. Margot came back, saw her book in my hands, wrinkled her forehead, and asked for the book back. Just because I wanted to look a little further on, Margot got more and more angry. Then Mummy joined in. Give the book to Margot. She was reading it, she said. Daddy came into the room. He didn't even know what it was all about, but saw the injured look on Margot's face and promptly dropped on me. I'd like to see what you'd say if Margot ever started looking at one of your books. I gave way at once, laid the book down, and left the room, offended as they thought. It so happened I was neither offended nor cross, just miserable. It wasn't right of Daddy to judge without knowing what the squabble was about. I would have given Margot the book myself, and much more quickly if Mummy and Daddy hadn't interfered. They took Margot's part at once, as though she were the victim of some great injustice. It's obvious that Mummy would stick up for Margot. She and Margot always do back up each other. I'm so used to that, I'm utterly indifferent to both Mummy's jawing and Margot's moods. I love them, but only because they are Mummy and Margot. With Daddy, it's different. If he holds Margot up as an example, approves of what she does, praises and caresses her, then something gnaws at me inside because I adore Daddy. He is the one I look up to. I don't love anyone in the world but him. He doesn't notice that he treats Margot differently from me. Now Margot is just the prettiest, sweetest, most beautiful girl in the world. But all the same, I feel I have some right to be taken seriously too. I have always been the dunce, the ne'er-do-well of the family. I've always had to pay double for my deeds, first with the scolding and then again because of the way my feelings are hurt. Now I'm satisfied with this apparent favoritism anymore. I'm not satisfied. I want something from Daddy that he is not able to give me. So, she feels closer to her dad. Again, he's the only one that she says she loves. So it kind of bothers her when the dad seems to kind of side with Margot and with their mom, because she feels like, okay, here's the one I love that I feel like I can confide in, but yet he's kind of not on my side. So she feels like offended all the way around. Page 45. I'm not jealous of Margot, never have been. I don't envy her good looks or her beauty. It is only that I long for Daddy's real love, not only as his child, but for me and myself. So she wants that genuine love. She doesn't want to be loved because he feels like he has to love her because she's his daughter. And we don't know that he feels that way. That's just what she's thinking. Again, she is a young teenager. She's turned 13, right? So girls at that age sometimes are more sensitive, and she's not quite as mature as Margot. So even though she speaks maturely in many ways, she's still very sensitive at this time. And they're going through a lot right now, so probably everybody's more sensitive right now. I cling to Daddy because it's only through him that I am able to retain the remnant of family feeling. Daddy doesn't understand that I need to give vent to my feelings over Mummy sometimes. He doesn't want to talk about it. He simply avoids anything which might lead to remarks about Mummy's failings. Just the same, Mummy and her failings are something I find harder to bear than anything else. I don't know how to keep it all to myself. I can't always be drawing attention to her untidiness, her sarcasm, and her lack of sweetness. Neither can I believe that I'm always in the wrong. We are exact opposites in everything, so naturally we are bound to run up against each other. I don't pronounce judgment on Mommy's character, for that is something I cannot judge. I only look at her as a mother, and she just doesn't succeed in being that to me. I have to be my own mother. I've drawn myself apart from them all. I am my own skipper, and later on I shall see where I come to land. All this comes about particularly because I have in my mind's eye an image of what a perfect mother and wife should be. And in her, whom I must call mother, I find no trace of that image. I'm always making resolutions not to notice Mummy's bad example. I want to see only the good side of her and to seek in myself what I cannot find in her. But it doesn't work, and the worst of it is that neither Daddy nor Mummy understands this gap in my life, and I blame them for it. I wonder if anyone can ever succeed in making their children absolutely content. Sometimes I believe that God wants to try me, both now and later on. I must become good through my own efforts, without examples and without good advice. Then later on, I shall be all the stronger. Who besides me will ever read these letters? From whom but myself shall I get comfort? As I need comforting often, I frequently feel weak and dissatisfied with myself. My shortcomings are too great. I know this, and every day I try to improve myself again and again. My treatment varies so much. One day Anne is so sensible and is allowed to know everything, and the next day I hear that Anne is just a silly little goat who doesn't know anything at all and imagines that she's learned a wonderful lot from books. I'm not a baby or a spoiled darling anymore, to be laughed at whatever she does. I have my own views, plans, and ideas. though I can't put them into words yet. Oh, so many things bubble up inside of me as I lie in bed, having to put up with people I'm fed up with who always misinterpret my intentions. That's why in the end I always come back to my diary. That is where I start and finish because Kitty is always patient. I'll promise her that I shall persevere in spite of everything. That means she's going to push on. She's going to push on no matter what happens. And I'll find my own way through it all and swallow my tears. I only wish I could see the results already or occasionally receive encouragement from someone who loves me. Don't condemn me. Remember, rather, that sometimes I, too, can reach the bursting point. Yours, Anne. That's some deep words coming from a girl that is 13 years old. And, you know, you don't really see her dad or anybody being necessarily cruel to her, but for some reason, Anne just feels like no one can relate to her. It's kind of harsh when, you know, she says that her dad's the only one she loves. And you could say, well, she's just saying this, but she says this kind of stuff over and over again in the diary. As a matter of fact, I believe I read that once her dad read the diary pages for the first time, it really shocked him, some of the things that Anne had to say in here. And it kind of just breaks your heart that she basically says her mom is not an example for a mom and that Anne is kind of her own mother. If anybody is teaching her anything about being a good person or a good mom, she's teaching herself. Basically, she is saying that whatever she wants to become, she is not getting that example from anything her mom has done for her. And that's kind of sad. I mean, we don't really know mom's side of the story. We don't really know what happened, you know, as far as what her mom has done throughout her life. We only see the way Anne feels. And it's really heartbreaking. So that is it for today. And tomorrow we'll start at 46 on Monday, the 9th of November, 1942. So just, you know, make a note that, again, she speaks to her diary because it's patient. Make a note that Anne only loves her dad, or she feels she only loves her dad. And make a note that she is trying to be good regardless of whether she thinks she has a good example to follow. You know, we always look to our parents as ones who teach us to be good, but she feels like she's not learning that from them. And maybe make a note that she resents the fact that Daddy and Mommy seem to always take up for Margot. And to me, some of that's just normal sister, older sister kind of thing. But for some reason, she really is offended by it. And so I think that's the main notes, besides what I told you was going on with the Jews being taken by the dozens and what's going on if someone's accused of sabotage. So anyway, we will meet again next time. Have a good night.